Counselling Muslims by Samira Ahmed and Muna Amer. This is really academical proposition. This book has gathered plenty of authors, and I'm sure it will suit those who are newbies, but also it will suit the taste of those who are quite into Islamic counseling or psychology, not only Muslims, especially for those of you who are non-Muslims and you want to understand how to work with Muslims. I think this book is very relevant for you, because the first critique that I will have to this book is the fact that it has plenty nitty-gritty introductions to what it is for us to be Muslims, with introductory to basics of, I don't know, practicing 5 pillars, so forth. So for us who are quite advanced as a Muslim or as a practicing Muslims and professionals, this is probably bit waste of it's a bit of a page turner, if you like, right? But nevertheless, this book, printed in 2012, I believe, doesn't deserve a critic that it needs to be updated. It really doesn't, because it goes into areas which are really important, really relevant. And if you like, it is a blueprint, it is a backbone to research, academical research and journaling, which is still going on. We keep on coming back to these authors. I'm not going to quote to you who is it that is contributing to this book. You have to explore that yourself. But I'm going to give you, I believe, a taste of this book. So again, as I mentioned, this book is for those of you who've never worked with Muslims, or you might not be Muslim yourself, and you don't know how to approach it, you don't know how to understand it, you don't know how to give haq, meaning the justice, to this work. So what you will learn from this book predominantly is how to make assessment and what to expect and how to approach contracting, and probably set the boundaries. You know, setting boundaries with Muslim clients is really important, because we tend to be very friendly. We are very communal, family-centered clients, very specific. We like to give you food, we like to invite you for tea, and so the boundaries here are really important to take into consideration. But also it's important for you as a practitioner to understand the Muslim, and this book, by all means, chapter by chapter, gives you a really good taste of what it is to be a Muslim client, and how to approach it at the level of assessment. And how to do it is to take into consideration things that we wouldn't normally do when we work with non-Muslim clients, with a generic public, things like personality, things like social support, things like a preferred choice of healing, of support, and that could be Quran, Sunnah. It could be a healer, meaning Hakim, a wise person, sage, or even family or parents. And that is really important to assess. Why? Well, you have to read the book to find out why. Okay. Another thing that we need to take in consideration when we work with Muslims, according to the authors of this book, is mental health beliefs, but also religious beliefs. It's, we're not homogeneous as a community. We are very diverse by culture, by experiences, by walk of lives, by the migration generations as well. And that brings us to the point that we need to make assessment about how is it that we are acculturated as a client? How do we balance that identity between, being part of us being ethnicity bound, part of us being race or culture or immigration history bound? What about gender? What about sexual orientation and religious orientation? Is it something that we are born with, or is it something that we've chosen for ourselves? Are we owning this Islam as a Muslim client? And what is the family influence in our understanding and practicing culture and religion? Those two things are different. Are we coming from patriarchal perspective, or are we being maybe even emotionally coerced by our parents with practices of Islam, or are we just like new new generation of Muslims now reviving their Islam? Are we going into mode of newer Islam, like more modernized understanding, more inhibited for the West understanding of Islam? And what implication does it have in terms of family relations? And family relations are really, really important, because as Muslims we are obliged to give respect to parents. And because majority of the cases, and it still lasts, it's still really, really valid, we're still moving from one country to country, experiencing cultural shocks and gaps, generational gaps. Concept of the self is really important as well when we assessing Muslim clients, because very often we coming as Muslims from communal perspective, and we don't understand what it is to be individual. Sometimes it's from the pound, sometimes it is actually experienced or classed by our community as a bad behavior, sometimes even a shame to our family. So very often you find Muslim clients sacrificing themselves financially, not only behavioral wise, but also financially and or emotionally, just to please others in the community, in their family. Sorry. Now, another point which is raised in this book, written excessively by many authors, including late AYISHA'S, is what is it that we do, meaning religious coping as a Muslims, before we come to counseling? Or what is it that we want to explore with you as a counselor? What is it that we want to learn from you in terms of religious coping? And in this book, you will learn, just like I've learned, that it can be actually a variety of things. It could, the remedy could be support of the family and those people that I mentioned, like hakims, wise people, imam, and so forth. But also spiritual counseling is attaining comment, gratitude, and sabr, patience, going back to the quotations of the Quran, which mention a lot about the purpose of pain in life, the fact that you being spiritually purified here and prepared for the better life in Akhirah is sometimes enough of the remedy for Muslim client. So just reminding that on the session can bring therapeutic change, just like that. Just being able to explore that with counselor means a lot to Muslim clients, meaning Quran and its psychological therapeutic understanding. That's what I'm referring here to. Another religious coping is the idea of religious coping is to sit down with your counselor, for you as a Muslim, and go through the lessons and see them as not only as a purification, but those life lessons as explanations, as a warning signs, as a point of view, taking Newton in your life, and looking at your self-responsibility as well. It's beautifully written by many authors here, including metaphysical matters. You also learn about metaphysical matters, meaning some Muslims they will concentrate purely on the idea that any mental health issue, depression, whatever, is related to metaphysical issues, of the fact that our iman is low. And some more progressive, more educated Muslims, or more self-developing Muslims, they will actually want to explore its impact, but also they want to understand plus, meaning other mitigating factors. And that's where you can come in as a counselor, be it you Muslim or not Muslim counselor. But it's never one thing, black or white. It could be dual approach. So that's what this book will give you, almost on the plate, right? Those tools, this understanding. What's really beautiful about this book, Muslim Counselling, is that every chapter gives you a case study. So if you don't understand, if you're newbie, just like I was newbie when I was reading it many years ago, if you don't understand what is written here, if you can't comprehend, I give you almost guarantee that by tuning into case studies, everything will become so easy, so approachable. Now, Another debate in academics, within our field of Islamic psychology or counseling, is the debate of how to integrate different models. And this book doesn't leave a stone unturned. It explains you what is the stand of of us as Islamic psychologists towards psychoanalytic or CBT or family therapeutics, humanistic, and you can learn so much just by reading this comparison. You really can. Like in case of psychoanalysis, we know that Freud, he reduced our human nature to sexual drives and inhibition. And from Islamic perspective, we want to say, yes, but there's so much more to us. There's spirituality to us as well. We have sexual drives, but we also have family, we have religion, we have other drives which contribute to our behaviors. You can read in this book about the selfhood, how Freudian approach to ego stages, id and so forth, are similar to nafs, mutmainna, nafs, amara, and so forth. You can also, well, it was important to me at least, you can also see how everything is not just related in us, in our life, in our psychology, is not just related to childhood issues, something that Freud suggested. Just bear with me a second, I need to charge my laptop, because Quran and Islamic psychology, they claim that there's more factors to our psychology than just past experiences, meaning we are encouraged to move on, and there is that beautiful quotation in Quran, verse 20, Surah 25, verse 70. I'm going to paraphrase it to you, that if we commit sin and then we will follow it up with a good deed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God Almighty, will forgive us that sin. We'll replace that bad sin, that bad deed, that sin, with a good deed. So that gives you motivation. If you think about it, that motivates you as an individual to move on, to strive to reach that highest potential. Speaking of which, accordingly to this author's, humanistic approach is the most compatible with Islamic psychology, because we do talk about highest potential. To us, highest potential is connecting with fitra, meaning remembering that meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, becoming more spiritual. And Maslow himself, he also developed, being humanistic in his approach, he also developed later on he contributed to psychotherapeutic or counseling approach called transcendental psychology, and they used Sufism a lot. So you can see how it was almost natural progression for humanistic approaches to come close to our understanding. The self in this book from humanistic approach is explored beautifully. It talks about self-actualization, prophetic journeys being explained and almost translated to us as their journey of actualization, as their perfectionism journey, leading them to life being centered around God. And what lessons can we draw from that? We learn about some difference about self-perception and self-regard, meaning conditioning. So humanistic approaches, they based, according to the authors of this book, okay, they base their understanding of self-regard, how we are with ourselves, how we think about ourselves, our self-esteem, something that is based on conditioning from our family and our society, whereas in Islamic psychology we want to add to it also waswas, and waswas comes from qareen and comes from our internal nafs as well. So there are some modification in humanistic approach, including maybe even the free will. So humanistic approach will concentrate on the free will and it will promote it. Whereas for us Islamic counselors, we say, well, hold on a moment. We have prescription for will already in Sharia, and we know that although we're using it with with a caveat, meaning we know that we're using it with accountability, and we also know that we cannot escape from qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so there needs to be the right balance in using that tool. Family dynamics in this book, they will be mentioned everywhere. So I give you guarantee that if you are an aspiring counselor, wants to work with families or with couples, you really need to dive into this book, because you will get, if anything, the great understanding about what family dynamics are and how is it that we need to use them. Obviously, it's not going to replace the Islamic family therapy course, but you will understand that we as Muslims, we concentrate as our identity is centered around family, and working with Muslim clients, you need to sit down and put a special lenses to understand what is the hierarchy in the family, what are the system, what are the intergenerational roles, are there any triangular relationships, is there any multi-generational trauma maybe, what about expectation adjustment, do we as the clients present to you equality and equity for both the genders? How about process of separation, especially for young adults, when they're going for this process of separation and going into individualization? How does this affect the whole family, not only one adult? Because parents, sometimes they don't have a platform to discuss it. It would be really good for you to sit down actually with your client and explore that for them. Now, CBT, again, is really promoted in this book from the perspective of observational learning, something which was promoted by Bandura, and we call it modeling, which is actually something that we as Muslims always understood as following the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And again, this book will explore maladaptive thoughts, something, the term which Beck come up with. But we also know that this rational irrational debate was always there, even in the 9th century of Islamic psychology, because we were discussing what to do. We were investigating what is it that we need to do with waswas, and what are the tools there to help us to change our internal mental health hygiene, but also what are the tools out there to help us with our behavioral adaptation to Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is, our attitude all the time. And this book, explores things like relaxation, imaginary, anger management, and other modification to behavior. Again, with emphasis that everything is under the shield of accountability. This book, and I really have to finish, this book will also be a good position for those of you who want to explore domestic violence issues. It will go into depth of what is it that you can expect, why is it that Muslim behaving certain ways, what is it that you expect from the family affected with domestic violence, what is it that you can expect from work with refugees. How do you need to prepare yourself? Or how, if you have a couple counseling or family counseling, how is it that you should work with adults, young adults, Muslim adults? How is it that you should work with couples who are experiencing maybe sexual issues? How is it to work with addiction issues, or Muslims in a social settings, like maybe housing, if you work in housing, or Muslims who are in psychiatric care, very close environment. So this book it will give you plenty ideas, plenty of food for thought, I give you guarantee. And I wanted to quote something from this book, which I read many years ago, and just before this video I sat down and I had to reread it again just to make sure that I have a correct understanding. And what I really enjoyed is this beautiful writing of Shabnum Darmasi and Abdullah Maynard, who are talking predominantly about how Islamic counseling is between tasawwuf, meaning the science of tazkiyah. Tasawwuf is the Sufi version, tazkiyah is the Sunni version of the process of spiritual growth, but also it is between, it is on the other spectrum between tip, meaning the biological, biopsychological approach to our health, so our somatic experiences also matter. And they use beautiful words. So some quotations like, I hope they will inspire you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Human growth and change is more than self-actualization, but about reconnecting with the reality beyond the self. And that reality obviously is going to be Lord. Seeking to understand the universe includes reflecting upon and being aware of oneness. And that is Quran 31, verse 53. This historical perspective reminds us that Islam allows and indeed encourages the use of rationality and experience, including from non-Islamic sources as well. We see those also in Quranic verses, those who believe and those who hearts set at rest by the reminder of Allah, now surely by Allah's remembrance and their hearts at rest. 13:28. All contented self, return to you, Lord, were pleased with yourself and pleasing to him. So enter among my servant and enter into my garden. 82, verse 27. So those two quotations, three actually of Quran, I hope are the most beautiful summary of this book, which is truly holistic, based on Quran, based on Sunnah, based on reflections and clinical evidence with case studies, and I suggest that this book is really good for all newbies and all of you who don't understand how to work with Muslims, you don't know who Muslims are, because this book will leave you with instructions. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Aisha, and if you want to work with me, if you want to train with me, just book the free consultation. The link is just above there, below this video, inshallah, and I will see you in next video with another book review. Assalamu alaikum for now.